Identity awareness in checkpoint firewalls. Identity awareness is also another feature that you can implement and benefit from the checkpoint firewalls and gateways, where you can not only allow the internal users to be able to go outside or from one side to another site using the traditional method of access control mechanism by implementing and allowing them using source and destination IP addresses, application type, or port addresses. However, you can implement identity sources, for instance Active Directory, or you can use browser based using captive portal, where you would create user objects and then allow them based on those username and passwords. Or if you have Citrix environment inside your network, you can use Citrix there. Or if you have Radius, you can integrate with Radius server. Or if you have identity agents installed on the endpoints, you can authenticate the internal users to be able to go anywhere using those credentials. Now, traditionally what happens is, if you have this internal client that wants to go to any web server, whether that being my DMZ or if it's outside, what happens is it based on the policy, you may implement that this user should only be able to access this web server using this source and this destination or this port or this application, etc. But what happens is, if another user, if that user is not there and somebody else uses this PC, so this checkpoint firewall would not be able to identify who is using that host node or PC or system. So in our case, what we have is, we have an Active Directory here in our environment. So what we will do is, we will integrate our checkpoint gateway, HQ gateway, with the, or we can integrate all three with the Active Directory, and then allow the objects or the users that are there to be able to go anywhere based on the policy that you implement. We will also use access role objects, where we will say not only match Kamran, however, instead, if Kamran, we would combine different components by saying that if Kamran, a user coming from this group, from this machine, and from this source network, wanted to go to this destination network, then only then you authenticate that user. So let's go ahead and implement this. Let me go to my Cphq, and let's see if my DNS is point to the Active Directory and my DNS server inside. So let me go to my my Cphq, and let me see if my DNS address is pointed to my internal DNS server. You need to come to host and DNS. So it's already, I already have configured this to my domain name, and the DNS IP address is my internal DNS server. That's good. So let me go to Smart Console and connect to my PMS, Policy Management Server, and let me provide the credentials: admin123. So the first thing that I would need to do is, I would need to install the identity awareness blade on the Cphq. So the situation is that I want the internal users to be able to go to this web server, to my that's located in my DMZ, and I want Kamran, the user, to be able to access this. No one else from this machine should be able to access, or maybe let's say this machine should be able to access this web server. So I'm here. Let me go to my gateway is in servers, Cphq, edit. So my identity awareness is right now unchecked. So what I would do is, I will check this, and it says that which do you have Active Directory query, Active Directory environment that you want to integrate with, or if you want to use captive portals where the where the where the if let's say the internal user tries to access that web server, it would redirect it to a captive portal where the client would need to provide the username, password, or the credential. Then the Cphq would authenticate it and allow the traffic. So in this case, I would say let me go ahead and check this as well. So I do not have Citrix or terminal services environment right now configured, so I'll only go with these two. So the domain that it's asking me for is to create a new domain. In this case, my domain name is mutasim.com and the username is administrator. The domain admin credentials that you need to provide here. So the password is test123 and the domain controller is srv. So connect. So you can see that I'm successfully connected to my Active Directory. I'll go ahead and say next. So this is just a sample sample policy that I would need to create, or it's showing me an example that you can create finance users being as of a group or source or users and destination where they wanted to go and type of service. For the action, it's accept and display captive portal. There is a tick box that I will show you. So what happens is if I don't tick that, let me quickly explain again. So if the traffic comes from the client to the checkpoint gateway, it will check it against the Active Directory. If that user resides in my Active Directory, then after that it will accept the traffic. But if I say captive portal also, it would redirect it to itself, and the user would have to provide the username and password once again, and then after that the traffic would be allowed. So this is showing me the main URL that the traffic would be redirected to the captive portal. So right now I don't want to change anything here. I would say next and finish. And what I'll need to do is I need to install this, publish and install it on my Cphq. So I'll go ahead and push this installation, publish. So I'll select all the gateways. Right now I only did it for Cphq. Let me go ahead and create some user objects in my Active Directory. Let me go to my server. I hope you are able to see the topology. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create a user and a group. I'll create a user named Kamran. Kamran is my son, by the way. So I'll say tsa.msc, and I'll also create a glue record or host a record for my DMZ web server. DNS GTC. So I will say a new user. Kamran. Next, and the password is test123. User must not change the password and never expires. Finished. And I'll create I have my forward lookup zone and motasem.com domain, and what I'll do is I'll create a host a record for my DMZ web server. So I'll create a host a record here, and I will say whenever someone says www.motasem.com, forward it to 10.0.1.1. okay, so done. So now what I'll do is let me also go ahead and put this in a group. Put Kamran user in a group. I'll say let's say he's from IT. I'll put this Kamran in the IT group. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a policy for Kamran user to be able to access the DMZ web server. And let me go to Smart Console. Before creating that, let me go to the properties of the Cphq. Here you can see identity awareness. So right now I have browser based authentication that's being selected. So if I have a user that resides in the Active Directory, if traffic comes from the user to me to the checkpoint gateway, it will check it against the Active Directory. If there's a match, if that user is created there and it resides there, so the traffic is allowed. But if the captive portal checkbox is selected, the user would still be redirected to provide the credentials and then be authenticated to access that web server. So I'll go ahead and select this as well. If you wanted to edit this address or the portal details, you can go to the settings and you can change it here from the portal from this location to somewhere else, or the accessibility settings. You can create other aliases. So it also is using a self-signed certificate. If you have your own CA server inside your environment, you can import that, and then the client should also have that certificate so that they can trust each other. And the accessibility also, you can edit and say which interfaces should get this captive portal address. So I'll say okay, and they should get the username and password. They should provide the username and password, then they should be authenticated. I will also check this logout user whenever they close their browser, so the next time they wanted to go to that web server, once again they need to provide the credentials. I'll say okay. So right now I have two sources. If you have other sources like Citrix, terminal service, or if you have Radius, so you can implement other sources here as well. So I'll say okay, and I'll go to the security policies. So I have 4 rules. So let's go ahead and create a rule inside create a sub rule inside my DMZ in inline layer, and let's go and create above the a rule above the web server traffic, because it's once again for my DMZ. So I'll say new rule above, and I'll say, let's say this is the DMZ web, whatever name you want to give it. In the source, you need to create an access role object. So I'll go ahead and create an access role object. Here you can see that I can specify network, from which network, which user, which machine. Then after that I will say what to do with the traffic. So in this case I will just name it Kamran, and from specific network, let's say the HQ network. I can say any network. With the user, I would say the user resides in my Active Directory, so I'll say specific users, and I'll add. So here if you click to the show navigation pane, you have this motasem.com domain, and if you expand here, if you click on users, you should have Kamran user and the group. So in this case, I will go ahead and select the entire group if I may have other users inside that group. You can also specify the machine from which machine that user is accessing this web server. So I leave this for as of any machine right now as default. Okay. And for the destination, I want to specify the DMZ web server. Uh, the address is 10.011. For the service and application, I want to say only HTTP. And for the action, I want to say accept. And if you click on more, you get this enable identity captive portal. So I will check this as well, so that even if I don't check this, what happens is the user will be allowed. Why? Because the traffic would be checked against the user will be checked against the Active Directory. If this users wanted to go to that DMZ web server Kamran, it will be checked against the Active Directory. If the user is there, would be forwarded. But I will go ahead and enable this identity captive portal. So if once again the user would still need to provide the username and password to be able to access it. So I'll say okay and install this. So I'll go ahead and install it. Install. Let me go ahead to my web server and see if my XAMPP server is running here. I already have installed XAMPP server here. That's giving me web services. So I'll click on my DMZ web server. So let me start the services. So I'll say sudo apt lamp and start. So the password is test123. So they have started. So now if I go to any of these clients, let's go to Windows 10. Windows 10. If I go to www.motasim.com, so you can see I'm getting a certificate error message because the issuer of the certificate is the Cphq, and Windows 10 or the client machine has no clue of that certificate. So if you have your internal CA server, and then you can use that certificate which I showed you, and then both of these would trust that certificate. So right now I'll go ahead and proceed. So here I'm getting this captive portal, and the username was Kamran, and the password is test123. So it's showing me the remaining time which we can edit as well in the properties of the Cphq. I can also go to motasim.com, or I can click on this link here that would take me to the original destination. So I'll say so it's taking me to the to my web server, so I'm able to access my web server. Let me go ahead and enable log so we can see some log messages. Let me go ahead and regenerate traffic on my client PC. Let me just completely close the browser because I want it to ask me again, or let me access it again. So continue, because I checked the box there in the properties, whenever I close the browser, it will ask me again for it, for the credentials. So it's test 1 2 3. Take me there. So let's go to the logs and monitor. I should now see some traffic, some log messages. So I'll remove this filter, refresh. So you can now see that for the source username, I do have Kamran, the user, that has accessed some services. So here, this is the HTTPS, which is the redirection, which I don't want because this is the inspection that's being performed to the gateway. So the source address was this, and what I want here is the HTTP traffic, which should be for my web server. Here, yeah, this is the DMZ, this is the one. So the source was this, the destination was this, the username was Kamran, and the destination zone was DMZ, and the traffic was accepted. The access rule name was DMZ web, and NAT was also being performed. So that's how you implement identity awareness. Thank you.